Good afternoon. This is Ed Saltzberg, and speaking for Sean Cambell from ePipeline and Jimmy Baker, one of the leading strategists in the business, and also Nick Lutkins from EchoPoint Marketing Partners. I welcome you to the third in our recent series on webinars. Our last one was on the federal budget and budget implications. Before that, we did a really interesting webinar on small business opportunities, and today we're looking at messaging and verticalizing that message so that you're dealing with the lines of business that the government recognizes, number one, but also getting the message in appropriately to each of the agencies. This will help you more effectively find the business that's in your area, and through a process of research, branding, and then excellent execution, get yourself very well positioned, but also ready to write great proposals. I just mentioned who the webinar team is, and we'll have a little more information about each of us as we go along, and also at the end of the presentation. Today we're going to discuss an approach that will show you not only how to find the opportunities, but also how to sharpen up your positioning with the clients. And this basically is focusing on what that branding message is and showing you techniques to get that message to be consistent across all of your marketing and sales platforms and interactions with the client. And then also how to leverage that brand through the capture process into the development of the proposal. Abraham Lincoln said, if I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I wouldn't spend much time chopping down the tree. I'd spend most of that time sharpening the axe. And that's really what branding is about, getting yourself prepared so that the message that you're bringing into the client is clear, one they want to accept, one that clearly puts you in focus with their organization and puts you in a position where you're moving ahead of the competition, because you've gotten yourself really in focus with the needs of the client. And that's why Nick Lutkins is here, who's a real expert in developing messages and developing brands for both commercial and government clients. And so we're calling this verticalizing the process for research, branding, and capturing the market. And the traditional vertical markets are these. These are many, but maybe not all of them. And the way you message and serve up your message in the various markets really can differ. And in a lot of ways, these are lines of business for the federal government. OMB came out early on in the late 90s with a concept of lines of business, which they've carried through to today. And those lines of business are a really good way to focus your branding program overall. So in 2004, they added to the original lines of business, which were really business-oriented, financial, grants, and health, and then more programmatic ones, information technology, budget formulation, and geospatial information. And so moving your message through these themes, through these lines of business, are ways the government will really understand what it is that you're selling. But in the end, regardless of what your message looks like, you've really got to find the right tree, which means you've got to find the place where the government is spending money that's in your area. And so we're going to kick this off with some information from Shawn just about how you find those trees in the mass of the forest that are the ones you really want to sharpen your axe for to cut down. Then Jimmy is going to take it over and talk about how you actually find where the money is going within that forest, specifically within the agencies. So Shawn, I'm going to turn this over to you to break down the verticals.
Thank you very much, Ed. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sean Cambell. I'm with ePipeline. Some of you have heard of us before and or use us currently. What we like to do in this meeting here is to allow everybody to understand the market, the verticals, the avenues of how to get to where you need to without wasting your time, energy, and or money. Teams that go out within a company, I don't care what kind of vertical you're in, you still need to be prepared. Like Ed mentioned earlier with the quote from President Lincoln, he would spend 4 hours having his axe sharpened and then cut down the tree. In my opinion, I would say a little bit more is to be prepared. Bring the axe already sharpened and then go after the right tree. From that viewpoint, I will go into the next slide here and let you know that you need to know your landscape. Whatever your company is going to go after in the federal market and or state and local, you need to know what's out there, what's coming up for bid. And this is an actual screenshot. Everything that I'm going to be having you shown today is actual screenshots within ePipeline Solution. And these are going to give you an idea of what trees you need to go after. In this case, what RFPs are going to be out there that your team can really utilize on a long-term manner and or a quick push. You're going to need to identify every nuance of that contract as it starts, from the beginning all the way through to the end. And when you're able to identify the right opportunities, you're able to qualify them quicker. Your team's not going to waste time, and you're going to be able to track them. You're going to be able to show interest, and you're going to be able to win them more and more. Again, you know, when you look at opportunities coming out in the government, a lot of people say, well, the government's slow, or they might miss the boat on having a major update changed. That would really depend on case by case, but if you and your team are able to identify it and watch it as it goes through, you're going to get a leg up above your competition. On the next slide, I'm going to have you see the way to identify making that axe a little bit more sharpened. Incumbents are important for you and your team to understand who they are, where they're working, how much of the market value they're actually winning, and what they're doing for the government. This screenshot here is giving you an example of an overview of all awards by companies. And you can click on each individual one as a team member and identify what that company has done, from contract actions to even task orders. And it's very important that you know this, because of the fact that a lot of people don't realize, if you don't know the landscape, you don't know your competitors, the incumbents are always going to come back in and win. And the reason why they do that is because they're being prepared, they have their axe sharpened, and they're moving forward quicker without wasting their time, energy, and or overhead money spent on going after each RFP. From there, on the next slide, we're going to be able to allow you to identify leads and or clients, potential clients and or company joint ventures or partnerships. That's very key in the market nowadays. Not everybody's going to be able to go drive the ship alone. That ship might be an aircraft carrier, and you need a whole crew to do that. It's not like a one-man boat that you go out there and hoist the sail. You're able to identify who you might need on your team, and you'll get contact names, numbers, email addresses, and that's huge in the market, because nowadays a lot of people are trying to get ahead of the competition and or work with them. Next slide. We'll show you everything that would be for an example of a most recent contract action and or task order. As a company and a team, you are able to go in and identify everything that has just happened real time. It's not going to be where you're going to see every one of your competitors winning every day, but you're going to be able to watch what happens as it moves. You're able to keep it in order, so at any point in time, if you have a quick push meeting that just comes up in the next 20 minutes, you or a team member are able to go log in and identify what you need to show in that meeting and run it easily into any kind of report you need. And that way, you and your team are able to identify who's moving and who's shaking, comparable to the ones that are in stagnant disarray, if you will. There are times that you might know that there's a company out there that you're trying to work with, and they're not moving right now. So in order to identify and qualify opportunities, understand the market, knowing your competitors and or your partners, that way you are going to get even more of a leg up above competition and or the market in full. Because the federal government, they like to put things out and then move them, change them. They might get a protest. You all know this now. And a lot of things really could change on a whim. And on the next slide, what I'm going to show you here is going to be the amount of spending thus far. So if you're looking at the awards throughout the agencies, they're going to break them out to identify all the awards for fiscal years from '09 in this case to current year. Now, of course, current year is going to trickle in as it's ongoing. However, it's going to give you an idea of how much money is spent through the federal market already, and as well as recent years in history. Everything is going to be cross-referenced from the government end and start dates for their fiscal years. So you will have always bleed over. That way you can identify what has happened and what currently will happen. From that viewpoint, you're able to drill down and identify which agency is spending the most money in your NAICS code, if you will, your vertical, and that way you can spearhead which tree, in essence, or which agency you're able to go into with a quick slash and identify where your team can go and win more money for your company and or organization. And that's key because of the fact that if you know what's out there, you know what has happened, and you know what's coming up in the future, your team's going to be in a better spot to identify what you need to do right then and there and not waste your time. That's the whole thing, is not wasting your time just having to go through the whole forest of trees and identify that sweet one. On the next slide, what I'm going to do is explain to you the reviewing recent actions. You are able to log in and identify, drill in, and look at every time a company has an action done and or a task order, the amounts, where it was located, and who they are, and what agency. That way, you and your team are able to pinpoint, let's say, as an example, labor rates. Instead of looking at stagnant labor rates that might be out there online or wherever, you're able to see it real time and evaluate your own market and then utilize your own team's whiteboard, and that way you're able to identify where the money's being spent and how it's being spent. Next slide. We'll show you our home page, and everybody is able to go into epipeline.com. If you are not a subscriber, there's a lot of information out there. I am more than willing to bring people through it so you can see more, understand the ins and outs and how we work, and how we can actually enhance your company's team and business development moving forward. And there's a lot of things that can really happen in a quick push opportunity. So to identify them early, qualify them quickly, and win them in the long term is going to help your company succeed in this market, especially nowadays the way the government is working. Keep in mind, you're looking upwards to 60+ months in advance notice, as well as ones that are out today and they might be due next Wednesday. So to know that market, to go in there and just verify what you need to verify and move on is going to give you and your team that leg up above and beyond everything. And I really appreciate everyone's time, and I'm going to pass it on so that way we can have more time for Nick and see what we can get done for everybody here.
Thanks, Sean. We're going to turn this over to Jimmy, but I wanted to remind people to put questions in the little box on the GoToMeeting window. There'll be a little question box there. Just insert those, and we'll answer as many as we can at the end. So, Jimmy, how do you find where the government is spending money?
Thanks a lot, Ed. And hey, for whatever reason, sitting out here in California, my system has not asked me if I want to take over driving the slides. So why don't you, in lieu of that, why don't you go ahead and do that for me, and we'll go to the next slide.
I'm going to let you take this over yourself.
Okay. All right. Folks, I want to begin today by telling you a story and giving you a quick walk away, and then we're going to get to Nick, and he's going to take you through how you leverage all this data and ultimately put it into a messaging or your EchoPoint. Years ago, I was speaking out in the state of Atlanta at a conference on researching, understanding the government issues, how you develop unsolicited proposals, etc. I had someone from the government auditing my class, and at the end of the event, I asked if there were any questions. This lady stood up and she said, I was brought here by the government today to audit what you were saying. She said, I want to tell everyone in the audience that if you do half the stuff that Baker's saying, we'd be more likely to respond to you. She said, the biggest problem that we have is people don't use our words and our phrases to communicate with us. And what I want your walkaway to be with this is ultimately that you might sell a widget or a product, service, whatever it is, to an agency, but let's say how the Department of Agriculture would see the use of that tool might be very different than what Department of Defense does, Veterans Affairs, etc. So what we want you to think about today is that you need to develop a verticalized approach. A lot of companies have an horizontal view that we do healthcare and it's across, but what I submit to you today to think about is that many of these verticals that Ed went over at the beginning of this are duplicated in multiple departments and in sometimes multiple agencies. So you want to develop a very streamlined approach. Like with everything you can see on your screen right now, it all begins with the budget. And I'm a big believer in understanding, where your target customer is going to spend money. Ed, for whatever reason, I do not have control of the slide deck, so I'm just going to need you to move it along for me. As you're starting to look this year at the budget, I was just out there this morning, understand that we are entering an area, as you might remember last month when we spoke, most people I know right now in government are on alert that there's 20% reductions coming in salary, that things are changing. So this notion of cuts, consolidations, and savings, go read this. There's going to be more cuts, consolidations this year than there were in the last 3 years. Next slide, please. So as you're going through this, keep in mind that there's this need to look at how we maximize what we have and not spend more. I love GovLoop. I've had a chance to meet with those folks a number of times, and they did sort of an independent survey. And GovLoop, if you're not familiar, is like the Facebook for the government business. And what they said, and they had a number of CIOs, and you can read this study for yourself, but they said when they interviewed the government and they wanted to know what they were talking about, they were interested in agile government, cloud technology, turning data into power, expansion of mobility, and social government. So, if this is what the government at a pulse is saying they want to interest in, a lot of what I would be looking at to market would do that. Next slide, please. The other thing that we want to focus on is that, and again, you can research all this information yourself, but my point is, if you're selling, whether it's cloud solutions, mobile, agile consulting, if you're not communicating in the government with what's important to them, they may not hear you. There's a link here. I want you all to go out and read this, but you will see, again, this reemergence, mobile, cybersecurity, driving efficiency. Let me assure you, with the current clients I work with, on a given month, I'm speaking probably to 5 or 10 government people, and these themes are absolutely reiterated throughout our conversations that they're looking for this. And in particular, this idea of spurring innovation. The government has written in its plan where they have fellows right now that are at the White House, and the whole idea is to make sure that the government has access to people that have knowledge of cutting-edge technologies and great things like that. So keep in mind, the government's looking more or less, more efficiency, driving things across government, doing a better job. All in all, well, the citizen is engaging with the government through mobile devices in a more and more disconnected environment. Next slide, please. So here's what I need you all to do. And as I work with clients and deliver go-to-market strategies for different agencies and playbooks, one of the critical places to start, and again, I highly recommend SHAUN Service. If you don't use it, you should. It's a wealth of information. I would also recommend going out to the federal budget and get an understanding. Now, for those of you who have heard me speak before, I'm not going to go into detail on this. I have the links here on the page, but the idea, and go ahead and move to the next slide, Ed, is that you want to go into the budget. And what we're really trying to figure out when we look at this massive array of spending is how is the government spending money that I care about because it resonates with the products I want to sell and market. Let's go to the next slide. As you go out and do this, and you're looking at this, I may be the only person that that's read through all 7,272 budget line items. I can assure you these are accurate, but look at this. As I'm going through it, these are some of the key things that the government is saying, you know what, we got $74 billion we're going to spend on technology services. Here's where we're spending that. So again, if my marketing, if my branding, if my websites, if the things I'm communicating to the government don't reflect a breakdown of this, what good is it? Because they're definitely interested in buying the things here. And this is literally me going through, line by line and looking at what they're spending. Next slide, please. This is a very important slide, and as you can tell, I started with the agencies that begin. I didn't get real far in this, but for many of you that have heard me speak in the past, I'm a big proponent of knowing where the DME, that stands for Development, Modernization, and Enhancement Funding. This is the new money that's going into programs. In my book, I detail this in far greater length than what I'll do here, but here's the bottom line. We know what the government's spending. We saw that on the last slide. We know the kinds of things they're spending, but then these are some of the programs that brand new money is going in to fix those things. If you go to the next slide, Ed, please. And the idea here is that you always want to be tracking what they need, where they're spending it, how they're spending it. Now, we don't have a great deal of time with the way this webinar is structured, but when I speak around the country and train different companies, I will spend 4 or 5 hours teaching them how to understand the budget. But I'm giving you some takeaways, and if you have a pen and paper, just pencil these things down. Get a hold of the budget. Do some keyword searches for what your company does. Understand that you always want to follow where funding is being spent. The other thing, we have a spreadsheet that starts at column A, and it goes all the way through the alphabet. And you can see how we have that here on your screen. But what I want you to pay attention to is that when you're starting to look at columns T through X, I mean, the government is even breaking these down to primary functions, sub-functions. So again, if I was targeting this agency, the need for verticalized messages is really reflected in how the government's communicating what they have to us. I would look at the tabs of how Exhibit 53 is coded, and Ed, go ahead and go to the next slide. Always look at, too, the capital planning investment control process. So let me just take a pause here. We're getting ready to hand things over to Nick. I've known Nick for about 15 years. I've worked with him on multiple projects. EchoPoint is excellent. They understand how to take information and really find out what's at the pulse of your client. So again, let's just make a run through this. Go back and look at the agency you want to target. Highlight column K, which is the DME funding for the current budget year. Monitor the programs that have a large investment in it. Look at the words and phrases. Go back through. Look at agency plans, strategies, OMB, GAO reports. Have a clear, crisp understanding where they're having trouble and what they're going to spend money on. And what that lets you know before you go out and knock on a door, make a cold call, create a marketing campaign is you have a fundamental understanding they have these problems, they're spending money here, and that, in my opinion, is a great basis to begin understanding how you should brand and market to a vertical. I believe that's it for me. It's now my pleasure to hand things over to my friend and business partner who I've done on many accounts, Nick Lutkins. Nick?
Well, thank you, Jimmy. Welcome everyone who is attending today, and hopefully this has been useful so far. My background really is in the marketing and communication side of things, and I'm hopefully be able to give you some enlightenment of part of this process. What you're seeing here is a process. Winning business, whether it's government or commercial, is not pulling a rabbit out of a hat. It really is a matter of process. So I love the quote about, from Abraham Lincoln about sharpening the axe, because I think it really, 30,000-foot view here is that it's all about preparing, as Shawn said, and sharpening your axe. You've got to find the forest for the trees. You've got to find the tree in the forest, as it were. So far we've talked a lot about research, honing in, sharpening the axe in terms of finding the right tree. So staying with that analogy, I wanted to take that now into sort of a communications approach. And what we deal with is clients who are very good at what they do. They have great products or services. They're looking at penetrating the government markets. And one of the big differences, that, government obviously, as you know, is very different than commercial. The government is just a massive forest. So as we've talked about, the research up to now that we've discussed, it will help you find that tree. It'll find, even drill down, it'll find you the spot on the tree to chop. Those are your verticals, and it's very important that that research will help you focus on that. So what I'd like to say is about sharpening the communications axe here is how you go about communicating to your specific government market, the department, the agency, and the specific opportunity is very important. So I want to talk a little bit about verticalized messaging. And good messaging will help you to be much more efficient in your spend. What your efforts, your proposal, everything is going to be a lot sharper. Let me see if I can continue. Okay, there we go. Oops. Can we go back one? There. I'm sorry. Let me just see it. Okay. So bottom line, what we do at this point is we look at all the research that's been done, the numbers, the budgets, the specific opportunities, and then we sort of look at, okay, now what is it you're saying about your company? Broadly, you need to make sure your messaging on a corporate level is absolutely clear. Your competitive differentiators, your competitive advantages, all of those things from a corporate level. But then, as Ed said, you need to focus in on the needs of the specific clients and opportunities. So I also use the analogy of a magnifying glass. If any of you have ever as a kid used a magnifying glass to light a fire, you know that if you're too broad, you're out too far, the circle, the light beam is too wide. It's not going to even heat up the paper. If you narrow that down more and more to that point where that it's almost like a laser beam on the paper, all of a sudden it starts smoking and it catches on fire. Well, the same thing is true with good messaging and communications. So you've done your research, you've looked at the budgets, you've really picked that spot. Now, how do you hone down your axe, your communications axe? So what we're going to talk about here is leveraging that research to create your company's EchoPoint for the government sector. So what is an EchoPoint, and how does it impact your company and help the government better understand what your organization does and offers? And this is what, going back to what Jimmy just mentioned too, is having somebody sitting from the government says, wow, if they used our language and really honed in, we'd be much more likely to hire them. And that's what we're going to do. So the name of our company is EchoPoint Marketing Partners. We chose the name EchoPoint. It's somewhat self-explanatory, but we think it really is an interesting, because it's like whatever messages you really hone down, you want to echo through all of your communications tactics, for instance, and channels. So I'm going to define EchoPoint here as, for the sake of this, is the precise expression of everything your company stands for. It's real, true brand. And that can be expressed visually, verbally, and behaviorally. That's very important, because not only how your people act and what they say and how it's projected visually, and why it matters to your target department or opportunity in this case. It goes beyond features and benefits. That's all fine and good. You need to be able to qualify for that. But what you've got to do, and what we help do, is to clearly paint a picture of how life changes in the eyes of your market specifically. So people buy brands because of how they feel about them, and not because of just the specific features and benefits, because your whole competition out there is probably offering a lot of the same features and benefits. If you can paint a picture in the eyes of the person, the contracting officer, of how life is going to change for them as a result of hiring you, you're greatly going to increase your chance of landing that business. So a couple of things I just wanted to point out and make this very real. There are a couple of sort of stories I'd like to throw out there as real live examples. One is a company. I'm going to leave the names of the companies anonymous here for privacy purposes, but one company that we deal with is a software company, and they are the top in their field. They actually produce software to help other software developers. They have both commercial and government clients. But when they were about to drop about $100,000 on a marketing campaign, we said to them, what is it that differentiates you? Why is it that your customers actually hire you? And the president said, well, it's because of the fact that we're very innovative. We're the innovators. We're the ones that wrote the book on this specific agile technology. And so we said, fine, and then we started to do some interviews of some of their clients. And in all cases, both government and in the private sector clients, they said, no, 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 not at all innovation. Innovation connoted costly and taking longer. They said the reason we hired this company is because it's about reliability of the software development. It's about timeliness to market. So that was very important, and we reported that back to them, and they completely changed their strategy because they were about to drop a lot of money on barking up the wrong tree. So that's one story. Another story is another software company that, again, does both commercial and government work. But their message is that they were very fast, efficient sprinters. And that was a great message for the commercial markets that speak that language. But to their government markets, what we discovered was that scared them because governments are much more bureaucratic, slow-moving. The people that are running the programs are actually threatened by the commercial folks that are too fast. So what they had to do is they had to take their core messaging and actually split it up, one for the government market, which spoke a very different language, versus the commercial market. And then one other one, which I think always drives home a point here, is that we have a client who was about to go after a very big contract with Google, and they were up against the incumbent, and they knew that their features, benefits, and solution were superior. They'd done lots of research. It was absolutely superior to the incumbents. Well, they submitted their proposal, came back, and they lost it to the incumbent. So our client called up Google and said, why on earth why did we lose? And Google came back, the contracting officer, and said, well, it just looked like the incumbent had everything you had. And they said, well, hold on a second. You know, we have this, we have that, we have the other, and you know, these are clearly advantages. And Google said, well, I wish that were in the proposal. And they clearly had done their homework, but they did not include it in their proposal. And we see that more often than not, is being able to identify and define those competitive advantages and making sure they go all the way through into everything you communicate. So those are just a few stories. Really quickly, what you will use from research to create your EchoPoint. EchoPoint, again, what we do, the messaging platform development to help you sharpen your axe, comes from research. I won't go over everything here, but you know, that could be your budget that you find out, understanding how the money is being spent, looking at your offering and how that will impact your vertical by improving a process or reducing hours needed, etc. So I'm not going to go into great detail here, but again, it's a honing down process. Think about this: as you're sharpening your axe, what you're doing is you're filing away the dull parts, and you're sharpening that message to be right on the message that your buyer, your procurement officer, is really looking for. As a process, One of the things that this does is we take all that research. If you start over on the left-hand side here, you take the the department environment, all of the challenges and goals that you've defined and researched. We look at your existing website, your messages, your current messages. What are you saying out there that a contracting officer could be looking at? And we go in and we develop what we call sort of the essence of your brand, or the echo point, and that is that concise capture of who you are, what you do, your competitive advantages, why somebody should look at you. So again, the process here is really about assessing, looking at all that research, defining, sharpening, then executing. That goes into every aspect of what you do. It might be at a tagline, might be slightly different for a government market than a commercial market, for instance, and your messages. Then you've got to deploy that. Everything you do, from your website to your outreach, social media, the capture proposal, everything there should reflect that core messaging to your specific target market. And then your chances of winning the business is going to greatly increase because you're not hitting with a dull axe. And again, without going into great detail, but you're leveraging that agency research into really the messaging report. We're looking at competitive analysis. What are your competitors saying out there? Looking at what they're saying on their website. We want to make sure that you do not sound like your competitor. One client of ours several years ago was one of those big two-letter acronym clients that you think about every time you turn on the lights. They were in their government sector. They were up against a big competitor of theirs in the same space, and what they discovered in looking at their messaging is it sounded almost exactly alike their competitors. That was very alarming to them, so they started the process of really looking at what separates them from their competitors. You don't want to sound like your competitors in that specific space. Developing a brand platform, something that really outlines and articulates everything that makes you different and superior. And then developing that into a messaging portfolio that includes maybe a tagline, really defining the value propositions, ready to use messages, for instance, for specific targets, elevator pitches, special issues messaging. So I'm not going to go into great detail here. I'd be happy to talk to anybody more about this process. But again, this is all part of a process. It all sharpens your axe and gets you forward faster with less effort.
Hey, Nick, I wanted to chime in before you jumped over to Ed. I think one of the really valuable pieces that I have seen EchoPoint and Nick's team do is they will actually go out and interview existing clients as well as the marketplace for you. And sometimes, having been a business developer and marketeer for over 25 years now, we have a tendency to drink our own Kool-Aid and think that we know everything. And I think one of the more revealing things, too, is that in lieu of all this research and all this stuff we gathered, is that when you get belly to belly with that actual target market and are able to interview them, and that's one of the things I think that really distinguishes Nick's firm, is they go out there and get first-person account of how they're seeing things. And that a lot of times when you're taking your salespeople are going out making calls, you're bidding proposal, those little key themes, when a deal gets down to it, there might be 2 or 3 companies really qualified to win, but when you can go some of those key insights, and I've watched Nick's company help many organizations do that over the last few years.
Great.
Good. Well,
okay, now I'm going to turn this back over to Ed and
Okay, I think I've got it, Nick. Well, thank you very much. And everything that's been said so far is extremely consistent. Whether you're looking for the opportunities, looking for where the agencies are spending money, you need to understand what your proposition is and what your strengths are. And that also carries forward into the capture of the program, which is what I'm going to be talking about in just a second. Up until now, we've focused on IT and business process solutions for the government, but the techniques that we're talking about here apply equally well in policy and program development, which is really my specialty, being kind of an environmental energy defense wonk. There are keywords here, too, that the government is still going to be spending money on going forward, even in a reduced budget: cost analysis, cost-benefit analysis, energy efficiency, in green environment. These are the keywords in the policy and program areas, which are really analogous to cyber and the keywords that you saw Jimmy talking about that come out of the IT side of the business. And I want to bring the concept of branding and messaging into the capture and proposal readiness part of the business, because you could do all of this, but if you're not ready to write the proposal and get those messages in there, you're not going to win. And it's very similar to the example that Nick gave about the firm that didn't get all of the information in. So you might spend 9 months working on an opportunity, getting your message really clear to the client, and you've got the opportunity, you've got the pursuit to the stage where the client really prefers the solution that you're talking about, and you think you really have it in the bag, like the example that Nick gave, but you lose and you don't know why. And moving into capture, it generally has to do with either the positioning that you've done, which is not completely understanding the competitive landscape, who you're competing with, not completely understanding the client preferences, the language that they're speaking, as Jimmy was talking about, the special differentiators that you bring in, which is really what Nick was talking about, and then other things that add to the strength of the position that your organization is in, like the theory of your team and how you're filling in the gaps in your overall proposal effort. And you could lose because of your positioning. You could also lose on readiness. So moving from getting the selling done and getting the client prepared for your proposal, then you've actually got to write a winning proposal. And very often, and I spend a lot of time doing some very simple things with clients, storyboarding, working on management plans, getting things done early so that when the RFP comes out, you're not rushing around doing the things you could have been doing a month ago and clearing your deck in order to get prepared for that RFP. But instead, many firms are running around doing a lot of the background stuff. So they might have, and when the RFP comes out, they may spend a week or two, really waste a week or two of time doing things that could have been done earlier. So in addition to positioning, you really need to get ready to win that contract. Going from positioning to readiness very often means finding ways to translate that message from your marketing program into your capture program and getting it into the proposal. One technique I like to use is to get the executive summary of a proposal written first. If the proposal manager or capture manager can't write a clear, compelling executive summary, I would have no confidence that they could do that in the proposal. So if the executive summary is not a winner, it's time to throw the anchor out and see where that whole opportunity is in terms of its messaging, positioning, and the clarity of its solutions. It's not just being ready for the proposal, or for the RFP, that's just the positioning part. Really, you need to test to see whether the team, the organization is really ready to write that proposal. And this slide comes from a free training I have on the website called Ed's Essential 11 Elements, and this I think is number 9. And so there are 10 other tips like these, and I just encourage you to go up on the ERS Advisor's website and watch the video and pull down the slides, and you can see the other 11. They're pretty easy and interesting. Another one is pipeline velocity, so I just want to chat about this for a second. Once you've identified that opportunity and you're going after that tree, one tree doesn't really make a business development program. You need a bunch of trees to get into your pipeline. And in the end, it's the management of your pipeline that gives you the ability to meet your financial goals. The messaging and positioning will get you in position to win a contract or a piece of business, but you've got to move from there into the whole work chain that you're going after, the whole pipeline that you're going after, in order to really meet your goals. And so there's some good measures to use, and I spend time in this free training and then also in a pretty good pipeline management tool called the Business Acquisition Tracker that I have up on the website too. This one is not free, but it's not very expensive, and it's a way to get your whole pipeline into a decision framework so that from a management standpoint you can understand the landscape of business and the quality of the opportunities that are in your leads. And it's based on a Shipley method of 5 stages of pursuits, a way to organize yourself to go after opportunities in a systematic way. A systematic approach will beat an unsystematic approach 9 times out of 10. But I want to talk about a visual called the BAT map. And this is just a diagram that shows opportunities in each one of those squares or ovals are different opportunities, in which on the left I'm measuring the maturity of the capture or of the pursuit, from you don't know much about the opportunity to you're very well positioned or you're advantaged, plotted against time at the bottom, which is time until the request for proposal is due to get out. So it's a relative number, 26 weeks until the RFP comes out. So not each one of those opportunities are in the same time frame, just relative to when the RFPs are coming out. And if you just look at this, you can see the things in the upper right when the RFP is coming out and you're very well advantaged, you've tipped the playing field in your direction. Those opportunities look like they're very well positioned to win. Alternatively, you'll see ones down here that are not very well positioned. So using a management technique that classifies each one of those pursuits into how mature they are, and you plot them against time until the RFP comes out, gives you a really excellent idea of the quality of your pipeline. So from a management standpoint, I'm very happy about these, but as the manager of this organization, I don't know what happened here. Things slipped through the crack and we're not very well positioned for these, yet the RFP's coming out, and we have ones over here that should be ready, should be moving up through the pursuit process to get to the upper right over there. If you go up in the ARS website, you'll see a little video that gets into this more, and I have a special offer at the end for those of you that are interested in a real rational, efficient way to manage your pipeline and to get the right analytics up to management. That we'll talk about in just a couple minutes. So this is essential element number 7 in the free video that's up there. So I just encourage you to take a look at Ed's Essential 11 as well. I'd like to turn over to questions now, and I've been talking so I haven't seen what the questions look like, but it looks like we've got a bunch in here. So let me... Okay, Nick, here's one for you. Any thoughts about how to use EchoPoints to market primes as opposed directly to the end client?
Actually, that's a very good question. We actually recently had worked with a company in the intelligence space, basically a government contractor in the intelligence world, and they mostly work through primes. And one of the problems they had, because they do both direct and through primes, is they were perceived by their primes as being much more expensive per hour. Their rate was a lot higher than what is typically accepted by the government. So the primes were concerned about their hourly rate. So part of the messaging that we did for this company was to help them actually articulate and help them with language to overcome the cost factor. So if I hear your question correctly, is absolutely as you develop an overarching messaging platform for your company, you then drill down and you look at all the potential audiences, and then you kind of, what's the word, slice and dice that messaging to really be right for that specific target market. While it stays still on the overall correct messaging, but fine-tuning it and sharpening it for that specific target. So hopefully that answered your question. I'm not hearing anything. Can anybody hear me?
I'm sorry. I think I just went on mute.
Okay.
So the second question was about how much effort is it to develop that EchoPoint marketing approach, and is there an EchoPoint Lite? Do you have to do it all in order for it to be successful?
Good question.
Another great question. No, actually, the amount of effort really ends up depending on the number of sub messages you need, or so a company that might have 3 or 4 different markets, distinctly different markets, would take more effort to not only develop their overarching messaging, but then drilling down into those specific practice areas, for instance, or opportunities, departments, agencies, etc. But what we have done is we have developed a kind of a system that has different components to it. So you don't necessarily have to do it all. There are sometimes components that are really more honed into what you're doing. Anybody that has that question, I am more than happy to go offline, show you a quick PowerPoint of what our process entails, but it can be extremely cost effective, and I don't want to really go over a lot of cost, but cost-wise, it's fairly very reasonable. So yes, we can do it in stages. We can do one part and not the others, but please feel free to contact me and we can go over that in more detail offline.
And there's a third question for you, Nick, and this one is about moving into help with proposal writing. Do you have staff that will help translate that message into the proposals directly?
Yeah, another great question. You will always, our clients are always going to be the subject matter experts. So what we do is in any given proposal, there's going to be a lot of very technical sections, which of course we're not going to really be able to weigh in on. What we do is we look at the overall proposal, usually everything from the executive summary to a lot of your, what I'm going to call general boilerplate, et cetera, to make sure that the messaging that has been developed, the platform, translates consistently throughout that proposal. We're not going to change numbers or solutions, but we are going to make sure that everything that is essential to your messaging and your solutions are reflected in that proposal consistently in the same language, using the words and phrases that we've discovered through research that really hit the target market to what they want to hear, and to also help you try to paint a picture of how life changes, constantly looking at the language to paint that picture for the person reading it and evaluating it.
Good. It's important to get the message into the proposal, otherwise it's not going to get scored. Shawn, here's an interesting question. ePipeline looks like it has so much information in it, it looks very expensive. Is there something for small businesses or startups like us?
Absolutely. I'm actually one of the key players in instrumentally working with SBA companies and veteran-owned and 8As. There are specific needs by specific companies, so I tailor the package around them. and as well as the offer that we've got going for anybody that is joining us today. You actually would be able to get 20% off the regular rates, plus there's an extra bonus of 25% above and beyond that off if you become a client before the end of this month, which is pretty quick, but at the same time I am more than available to meet with anybody offline at that number and or email, and I can go into specifics with each one of you. There is no way a SBA company can spend the money like, as an example, SAIC or Lockheed or Northrop or Verizon, and I understand that, and ePipeline understands that. The market is hard, you know, as it is right now, and a lot of people don't realize that there's help out there, and it does not need to have your wallet emptied. Almost like owning a Jeep stands for just empty every pocket. You don't need to do that in government. You need to pinpoint what you need to get at and identify it and win without the loss of overhead expenses in the wrong areas. So great question, and I just realized there is a typo in my email address on there. It should read sean.campbell@epipeline, line.com.
Great. I think I made that error just so you'd be able to point out how to actually spell the name. And that was the last question, which is kind of timely because we're about out of time. And Shawn, you did mention some special offers today, and Jimmy had wrote a great book. Even at full price, this is a great book to get. I use it all the time. It's just a great book. It's inexpensive, and if you don't have it, you should just buy the book. Go up on Amazon and get the book. And Jimmy's offer is a free 30-minute consulting session with Jimmy, and if you buy the book before March 15th. And anything else you want to add to that?
No, not at this time. Just again, if you have some questions about some of the techniques that we talked to, I know we covered a lot of data very, very quickly. Just ping me after the webinar. I'd be happy to chat with you.
And
hey, Ed, this is Shawn real quick. I just wanted to mention about the book that the author is on the phone with us today. Jimmy has written a book that is extraordinarily excellent. How to Win Business from the Government is one of those kind of books that you might know a piece of the pie here and there throughout that book, but in order to put it all together and have that as you know, your guide to help you on an everyday basis, just have it in your back pocket. I'm an Eagle Scout like Jimmy is, and I would like to throw this out there as a viewpoint. When you go through scouting, you are trained to be prepared no matter what. And this book right here represents the mannerisms that is all around being prepared and ready for where you need to go. And it's a very great read.
yep, I agree with all that. It's a great book. You should just buy it for $11 or $7 on the Kindle. It's just hard to just not get the book and read how to actually do this. I love to talk about consulting companies. It's my 34th year in the business. I was a senior officer at SAIC. I came up through the ranks pretty quickly. I've run organizations. I've led marketing programs. But I have to say I haven't come upon a question about an issue a company was facing that I couldn't guide them through or find somebody or find a way to get an answer to that question. And I'm perfectly happy to talk to any of you at no charge, just to talk about what's going on in your company and maybe shake out a little bit of cobwebs, give you maybe some new points of view, some new ideas how to grow your business, how to be more successful. And you can contact me here. If you found the slides that I put together earlier interesting, please go up on the website, take a look at the free stuff that's there. But I also have an offer just just for people that are on the webinar. And if you go to webinars, ersadvisors.com/webinar special, you can't get there from the website. You've got to go to webinar special. I'm combining the training video that I have. It's a 2.5-hour training which covers the Essential 11 and much more, plus a desktop single-user version of the Business Acquisition Tracker that pulls all the analytics together, that spits out visuals like the bat map, and gives you a way to manage your whole pipeline so you can meet your financial goals. And I'm just selling the whole thing for $4.95. I think it's a tremendous bargain, and so do the people that have bought it. It's a big savings over just buying the tracking system itself, which is $2,000. And this is a single-user version. There's also an enterprise version, which is for a company. And from Shawn, Shawn is offering a 3-day free trial of ePipeline. If you don't have it, you should just sign up for the trial. You'd just be amazed at how much information you're going to get out of it. You're going to be much smarter after 3 days for doing that. He has a standard discount of working through him of 20%, but if you do sign up with him by Thursday, you'll get a 25% discount from ePipeline. ePipeline is pretty affordable to begin with, but with the discount, it really is extremely affordable.
And also keep in mind, too, that when you do want a free trial, contact me directly. I'll get that set up very quickly.
Great. And there's free stuff on the EchoPoint website, too, in terms of strategic approaches to their business. So I encourage you to go to EchoPointMarketing.com and look in the resource section. You'll find some pretty interesting downloads right there. We are continuing our webinar series, and from here over the next 4 months, we're going to be doing case studies of individual departments and agencies. We hope to pull in some agency people to really firm up where the money is going inside of their agencies. And on March 27th, our next one, we're going to be taking a closer look at the Department of Transportation, and you can sign up at publicsectortechnologyexchange.com. It's also on my website and hopefully on ePipelines as well. And so I think that's the end of it. I appreciate everyone who hung on to the bitter end. And if you have any questions, please contact any one of us, and we'd be happy to talk with you and help. So with that, I'm just going to sign out. And anything else from any of my sidekicks here before we sign off?
Nope. Thank you very much for attending.
Okay, thank you all, and a big thanks to the audience for staying with us.
I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Good day.